I'll give you a little bit of my backstory. Actually, I got to give you my backstory. So I was telling you how I worked at Central Casting. I did that for a couple of years, and I got on this reality show on ABC called The Glass House. And it's a show. It's like a ripoff of Big Brother. As a matter of fact, it was the ex-producer of the show Big Brother, where you live in a house and you vote everybody off. And they're like, Alex, you're going to make it to the end. You're going to be the villain. And so I didn't know how to play it cool. Instead of being myself,
right,
I pretended to be the villain, and I was one of the first people kicked off. I was literally the second person kicked off. And so I got really like disenfranchised with Hollywood, and then I got a job offer here back in Dallas working for the TV show Cheaters. And I signed an NDA, so I can only say so much about it, but you can look into it and figure out how Cheaters works.
Okay.
But that show, we'd find people cheating on their husbands and wives. They'd call us and be like,
it's like an IR. You run up to people with cameras. I've
yeah.
seen that.
Yeah, it's basically stunting. That's why it's like I'm kind of comfortable when a camera in the middle of a public place.
I thought those were real.
Well, they are, some of them. So I started off as a production assistant. I worked there in college for a summer, and then when they hired me back, I just was working there, as a producer, like, making sure that people got on time, making sure the crew was there, make sure we had the camera, basically just kind of like more than a housekeeper, but just making people showed up to set, making sure we had a crew, making sure we had the location agreements. Like when we go on there, we'd have to get them to sign. Sometimes they wouldn't. So that was like that was what I was really good at, is after we filmed in a place, convincing the people to give us, to signing that paperwork. That's what I'm pretty good at. So I worked at that show for nearly 10 years, and then the host is a guy named Clark Gable. He's actually the grandson to the famous actor Clark Gable from Gone with the Wind. And Clark was my best friend. I talk about this. This guy had like the biggest drug tolerance I'd ever seen. He was from California, and his grandfather, Clark Gable, is like a huge, well-known alcoholic, but then his dad, Clark Gable's actual son, his first son, this is a grandson, my friend. His dad was like a big alcoholic, druggie. He actually, TMZ did an article on him. He got in a wreck on the Pacific Coast Highway, and there's a bunch of parked cars, and it was like since he hit the back one so fast, it was like a 10-car accident, and he was like on pain pills. So Clark was born kind of with bad influences. If you imagine if you had a dad that's been like a party animal. So Clark was a party animal, like more than I'd ever seen. I went to LSU where people partied all the time, and this guy put me to shame, put everybody to shame. And then once we're filming the end of season 17, dude, I get a call from his wife. He's like, Clark's dead. I'm like, what?
Wow.
And Clark, he bought like oxycodone or some sort of pain pill that had fentanyl in it. And the reason why I talk about his drug tolerance is like this guy would like party. As soon as we were done with the Cheaters bus, he'd have a 6-pack of beer like in the fridge. I mean, he wouldn't be drunk like while we filmed. He had some professionalism because he would suck if he was drunk. Like maybe one time or twice he probably came a little drunk, and I would be like, dude, you're slurring your words. It's bad. So he still had some professionalism. But I'm telling you, as soon as we got back to the studio, he's drinking beers. He's taking Xanax. He's taking Adderall. He's taking all these pills, and they were prescribed to him. Like I know he had them prescribed, but I guess he ran out of them. He went and bought them from some street dealer, had fentanyl in it, and he died. He died not drinking, but with his 19-month-old baby in the bed and his fiancée.
Oh my gosh.
And so after that, I got totally sober. I was like, man, I quit drinking. I quit doing, not that I was even doing drugs, but this is what changed my life is I'm like allergic to pain pills. They make me sick, but I had a really bad cavity that year, probably like 3 months before. And Clark was like, oh, here's, I was like, oh man, I can't work. He gave me a couple of pain pills. And I took them, and, then I got my tooth fixed. It wasn't that big a deal. And then they gave me some pain pills, and I just realized, like, dude, I could have died. Like, one of those pain pills that he gave me could have been fentanyl, and I could have died. So I changed my whole life. I haven't drank since. And I stopped drinking. I just stopped doing anything, any sort of drugs. I got totally sober, straight edge, as they say. And then from there, I was supposed to be the next host. So I'm like, my best friend dies. Or one of my when I say best friend, he lived in California, so he didn't have many friends here, and I worked with him. So I was kind of his, one of his closest friends. I had other friends because I've grown up here my whole life, but for him, and I just knew, I was just close to the guys, what I'm trying to say. And when he died, it shook me to the core. But then the guy that owns the show, this guy named Bobby Goldstein, he's like, yeah, you're going to be the next host. Then fast forward, it's April 2020. We're about to start filming the next season.
Right. And
then they hire this guy named Peter Guns, who's like a 54-year-old black dude from New York, like totally different than me. Like Clark and I were both like 30-year-old white guys. Right. So that's why I thought, oh, maybe I'm kind of similar to Clark, and I know the show backwards and forwards, so I would have been a good host. I would have been great at the host. Not trying to toot my own horn. I just know the show. I would have been good at antagonizing.
You were like the understudy, really.
Exactly, dude. I'm the next guy up. I was just how it was.
Right.
And then they decided to go a different way, kind of like to Virtue Signal, because the show is actually bought by Viacom, which is MTV.
Wait,
and
back in 2020 it was bought by...
Well, yeah, I mean, Viacom's the one that bought the episodes. Yes. So they rerun it, and it's actually syndicated.
So they came with their little notes and said, we need to change some stuff.
I'm sure,
Right.
I'm sure they told Bobby, we need somebody that's a little more multicultural or whatever. It's like
Right.
any McDonald's commercial, you don't see a white guy in it. That's just how the entertainment's going. So, dude, one of the other guys from Cheater's like, you should make your own podcast. And that's when I started. I started like that May, I think 26 is the first podcast I uploaded. And I just talked, about like conspiracies or what was going on in the world because the pandemic was so hot,
Right.
So that was going on. So that's why I was talking
Well,
about
it wasn't just the pandemic. It was like culture was exploding.
It was everything, dude.
Yeah.
Everybody realized like the government was just insane. Everything was being shut down.
All
We're
the
having George Floyd
protests,
riots.
right.
Yeah, I mean the world was like collapsing right in front of our faces. And so it wasn't for, I think, till August, till about 3 months after creating content, I was like, well, I'm going to go speak at a city council meeting.
Howdy there, cowboys and cowgirls, and welcome to the Meme Ranch. Round these parts we like to keep the content flowing. Everything from exclusive interviews to men on the street, documenting events, art, culture, politics, food, and so much more, exploring different cities, towns, and places off the beaten path. Visit memeranch.com to check out what we have to offer. Step up your fashion game with some of our unique custom apparel. Or even step up your collector's game with a custom piece of art designed by world-renowned sculptor and painter, XVALA. Check out his one-of-a-kind masterpiece, the Big Sausage, a meat lover's pizza frozen in carbonite. Truly a sight to behold for any appreciator of the finer things in life. All the ladies love it. It's time for a digital renaissance. Join us in making it happen, at memeranch.com.